Thanks to everyone for joining today, and welcome to the first session of the dMSA semester calendar. This one is titled When Memory Activism Meets Politics, the Bureaucracy of Commemoration. My name is Thea Blatt, and I'm a PhD fellow at Aarhus University at the History Department. I'm very happy to be your host today and to moderate this conversation between Sarah Dubriz-McQuaid, who's an associate professor at Aarhus University, and Leroy Lucas, who's an activist and engaged in various local initiatives in Utrecht in the Netherlands. My project focuses on colonial commemoration in Denmark, the Netherlands, and the US, so it's a bit along the lines of what we're going to discuss today. So today's conversation is the first one in a series of events, joint events hosted by researchers from Aarhus University in collaboration with the Memory Studies Association. And for these events, we want to invite an activist and an academic to join us in a conversation about memory studies in theory and in practice. In 2022, I was working on a research project in the Netherlands that focused on local and national memorials for slavery commemoration. And it revolved around these monuments that have been added to Dutch cityscapes since the early 2000s. I did oral history interviews with several of the actors who were involved in these processes of erecting slavery memorials, and that's how I first got to know Leroy Lucas, who has been working on the monument in Utrecht. So I'm very pleased to be able to continue our conversation from 2 years ago now, where the monument that Leroy and his partners have worked for in Utrecht has actually been realized. Today's event takes off with a conversation between Leroy Lucas and me, where he will elaborate on this process leading to the actualization of this Utrecht slavery memorial, as well as his experiences with joining politics and activism during the process. Then follows a short presentation by Sarah Dubriz-McQuaid about the administrations of memory and how memory studies can enter the field of bureaucracy, and the possible tensions with that, but also the possibilities of looking at that as a research focus point. And McQuaid is an expert in contemporary history, memory studies, and political science. After these two presentations, it will first be possible for the two speakers to ask questions to each other if they have any, and otherwise we will open up the floor for questions from the audience or comments. So please wait until after the first conversation and the presentation. If you have any questions during those, you will have time to ask those afterwards. So firstly, welcome Leroy Lucas, and thanks for joining us today.
I'm right here. Thank you for having me.
Great. So to provide a bit of context, the first Dutch slavery memorial was erected in Amsterdam in 2002. Then this was followed by a monument in Middelburg in 2005 and one in Rotterdam in 2013.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right.
And something happened around 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement, and several other local monument processes actually gained political traction, although they may have existed beforehand. Yours in Utrecht did exist before the Black Lives Matter protest wave of 2020, but we'll come back to that later. So first of all, could you explain this connection between the Dutch Kitty movement and these monuments for slavery commemoration? So why is it important to have more than a national monument? Why is it important to have these local monuments? And how do they connect to Kitty?
Great question. And once again, thank you for having me. When I first started, that was in 2017, if my memory is working. I had a conversation with the representatives of the municipality of Utrecht. And during that conversation, I told them that we as a Black community, we wanted to celebrate Kitikoti. We wanted to have a broader celebration, and we wanted to have a monument where we could, how do you say that? Have a monument where we could have a moment where we can, how do you say it? Think back or take a moment of silence to honor our past relatives. And the question was asked, well, you have one in Amsterdam. Why do you want one here? And I told them, well, that's because not everybody is always able to go to Amsterdam. And not everybody is able-bodied to go to Amsterdam. So I wanted to have a situation in which, especially the older folks, could still have a moment to honor their past relatives and celebrate our freedom with the city. Because Kitikoti, or at least Utrecht, has a history in slavery. Most of the black people knew that, but the city wasn't really on. The city didn't really know how deep the slavery history went. So, but we're just happy that we got the monument done and that we had a situation in which we could celebrate and you know um, reminisce or think back and have a moment of silence with the whole of the city. I think that's good for the city, and um, I think it's part of the healing process.
Yeah, so just to explain, Kitikoti is the anniversary of the Dutch abolition of slavery. So it's celebrated as a yearly festival. It used to be more of a minority celebration, but it has broadened
Yeah,
out during the past 20 or so years. Isn't that correct?
exactly. That's
Yeah.
correct. That's correct. Yes.
And there's even a petition to make it a national holiday in the Netherlands. It hasn't been approved yet, but it's
We're working on it.
to diversify the holiday calendar of the Netherlands to include this date that's very important for a lot of
That
communities, an increasing amount of communities in the Netherlands as well.
that would be something.
Yeah.
That would be something.
So your monument, the last time we spoke, it's been 2 years, and the last time we spoke, you were still in the process of figuring out how it should look, where it should be placed.
Yeah.
Lots of discussions were happening at that moment. But then the monument has actually, in the meantime, been erected last year, just
Yes.
the 150th anniversary of Kitikoti. Can you explain maybe what changed in 2020 around this period of time? So before then, how was the attitude politically towards this project you've been working on for a few years at that
Well, do you have like 5 hours? Because,
briefly?
oh man. Okay. Like I said in the first part, I went to the municipality and we had a conversation about um, having Kitikoti here in the city and have it be for the whole of the city because Kitikoti, we did do Kitikoti, but it was more uh, our thing, within our own community. It wasn't really um, like the whole city, or at least a majority of white people didn't really participate with us with this celebration. So my idea was to broaden it, to make it be for the whole city, because I already knew that the city had, like, a history with slavery. So my thought was, why not have everybody come in and celebrate and you know have a moment with us. So when I first went to the municipality, the major party that was uh, the Green Party, they were the biggest party, and most of them were cool with the idea, and people was thinking with us and trying to get it going, at least the Kitikoti celebration. So in 2018, I had my first Kitikoti celebration. And afterwards, I started conversation with the municipality about the monument. And the monument was, you know, it was it was it was a issue of debate. because they were like, you had people on the right who were like, well, we don't need a monument. They already have one in Amsterdam. And um, what does slavery has to do with Utrecht? And then you had some folks on the left. They were like, I think we need to look into this. And because the left had a majority here in Utrecht, um, they decided that Utrecht should at least have uh, what's that? How do you call that? When research done into the slavery past of Utrecht. And because of that research that Nancy Jouwe did, together with Matthijs Kuipers and Remco Raben, this little book came out. And I can tell you, because of two things, we have this monument today. Because one, this book, and George Floyd. So when this book came out, the truth came out. If you have not read this book yet, I would suggest to check it out. It's a very interesting book. It has a lot of things that I didn't know about Utrecht, about famous people of Utrecht in the past that were held into high regards, that all of a sudden, were marked by the history of slavery. People like Belle van Zuilen. You know, so I can honestly say that if it wasn't for this book and George Floyd, I would still be talking with people about the monuments.
Yeah. So the last time we spoke, you said there was like a moment after someone had reached out to you from Amsterdam saying that Utrecht was next up from Black Lives Matter, and
Yeah.
you this organizational
But
committee doing the protest in Utrecht. And then you decided to collaborate with some local politicians to get this monument through at that point where you could see there was a momentum for your cause. Can you talk a bit more about that, maybe?
yeah, like I said, George Floyd. When George Floyd happened, we were all at home. It was during the pandemic, so we all saw it. We all saw it, and I think it had a major impact. You might even say it was a catalyst for uh, for the coming of this monument. So phones were ringing. My phone was ringing, and people was like, "Hey, man, we need to do something. We need to do something. We need to say something. Something has to be done." And then uh, a few, I think it was like a few weeks after George Floyd was murdered or lynched on live television, the protest started. So after the protest in Amsterdam, I got a phone call, and it was like, "Hey, uh, Utrecht is up next. What you guys gonna do?" So I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Well, you know what? Let's do this." So I had a phone call with some of my friends, with some of my uh, um, my how do you say it? My party brothers and sisters, because I'm with GroenLinks, and we said, well, we need to do something. And there was this little discussion going on, because we didn't really want to do it like an official party thing. I think the party didn't really want to burn their hands on it. So at that time, I was uh, chairman of Kitikoti. So I said, you know what? Why don't we just do it through Kitikoti? Because Kitikoti is surely the better um, basis or template to organize this from. And folks were like, yeah, no, that's a good idea. So I called my people from Kitikoti, and I was like, hey, man, um, we're gonna organize a protest. And surely we started working with folks, and things just came. We started getting telephones from folks. They was like, "Hey, do you need microphones?" Yeah, we got them. Do you need like these vests, these orange vests, so people with the organization can be seen? It was like, yeah. It was during the pandemic, so people all of a sudden came with masks. Uh, Things were being done, and things were happening and free. So and during that time, it was pretty hard to get these masks. So I don't even still till this day I don't even know where all those masks came from, because we had like 3,500 people standing at the Jaarbeursplein, and it was amazing. It was one of the most amazing days in my life. I've never seen something like that. So many people in unison. It was just amazing. And every time I think of it, I you know, I sometimes do get emotional, because I've there was like one of the first times that I've seen everybody come together. Everybody, I mean, like black, white, and everything in between. Everybody, and it was just amazing. So, and you gotta remember, before that point, I was the one calling everybody for the monument. After that, I got a phone call like, "Hey, do you guys still want that monument?" So it's great. It's amazing.
So it really was originally an activist idea, a community-focused and based idea to have this monument built to create awareness, but also create a site of commemoration and
Yes,
remembrance.
that was the word I was looking for. Site of commemoration.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. But how did this, or did this change when it became like an officially supported and sponsored project? So when it entered like this sphere of bureaucracy and became a project supported by the municipality of Utrecht, did that could you maintain this original idea behind the monument, or did you have to compromise?
No, no. And till this day, I will be thankful to Linda Fortman, because she stood for us. She you know, she took the bullets. She took the hits in the municipality. Um, I don't know how to translate wethouder. She's she's the councilwoman, I think. I don't know how to translate that, but she stood in front of everybody and said, it's their monument, and they get to choose where it's going to come and how it's going to look like. So we didn't compromise in anything. So that I'm till this day, because I've heard the stories about other cities, and yeah, we had it a little different. So I'm till this day I will be forever grateful for her help to get this monument done.
That's good to hear. What about the placement of the monument? Has it been placed in a space with significance to Dutch slavery history? Or the last time we spoke, you weren't sure about where it was placed, but you said there was some political debate about
Yes,
where you.
because like I said, she took the hits. There were a lot of political debates about the monuments, of course, because like I said, before the protests and George Floyd, I was calling the municipality. And I heard every excuse in the book, like, it's not the time. It's kind of tricky right now. I heard it all. Why not to have the monument? But after after everything that happened with Black Lives Matters and George Floyd, I wouldn't say it was smooth sailing, but doors started opening, and we just walked through it. And yes, there were some debates. There were some heated debates here in the municipality. But like I said, Linda stood. She stood strong. She stood there and told them like, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." regardless of whatever you think or your party affiliation might feel, this is what we're going to do. And I think that's showing leadership. She showed leadership. And like I said, my community and I am very grateful for that. So yeah, there were debates, a lot of them.
So the past year, or from Kitikoti, which is on 1st of July 2023, to Kitikoti this year, there's been a herdenkingsjahr for Slavenijverleden, so a commemorative year for remembering Dutch slavery past, which,
Yes.
initiated on Kitikoti last year and will run for a year. Have you experienced any renewed political interest in your organization and in you as part of this Kitikoti movement, but also the movement behind the monument during this year?
Well, first of all, we gotta run it back a little bit, because after this book came out, the municipality, by way of the mayor and the council, the wethouders, I don't know what the name is in English for that, they went into consultation, because the thing was, if the municipality was going to apologize for their part in slavery. So at some point, I got a phone call from the municipality that said, hey, Leroy, the municipality is going to apologize for slavery. So when I got that phone call, yes, I called my peoples up, and everybody was like emotional, because we never thought that that day would come, that the municipality would say sorry for what happened. So we went into consultation with the mayor, and then the mayor went on the podium, and she apologized. After that apology, I think the leadership of the city understood that there was not really a way back. So we had to keep it moving forward. And I think that's like part of the reason why they were so steadfast into getting this done. And like I said, I'm very grateful for that. So that part happened first. But could you recap your question again?
Oh, it was about the year of commemoration for slavery. Thinking, sure.
So when she gave her apologies, we got later on at the end of the was it 2022, we got an apology from Mark Rutte, the prime minister. And I gotta say, that was a powerful apology. And I think things really started rolling at that point, because like I said, there was no turning back. If you speak it, then it becomes reality. And so a lot of things started happening. Like the finance for celebrating Kitikoti, that came smoothly. So that was good. And at the end of the day, I am most thankful for the fact that the leadership of the city took it seriously to get this done. I think, and especially in the commemorative year, to get everything done as fast as they did, I gotta applaud everybody. So, like I say, you guys see me here, but I can tell you, there were a lot of people behind this. So,
hey, I think we need to stop this conversation now, then we can continue with the questions afterwards, and then we'll hand over the word to Sarah Dubras-McQuaid, who will continue with a short presentation on her research into administrations of memory.
Thank you so much, Leroy. That was really fascinating. And I think maybe I'll start by saying what if I was to study your case, what I would do, because I'd be really interested in this councilwoman, Linda, and where she sits in the administration. And I would look at the kind of policy instruments available to the municipality to get these processes through, like are there hearings? Does it need planning permissions? What are the different kind of bureaucratic hoops that the process has to go through? And then I would be really interested in how that political and bureaucratic process both shapes the memories that we're left with, but also how it shapes the relationship between individuals, groups, and the state through this process, right? Because a lot of relationships have been forged in that process. And from what it sounds like your experience, it's been a good process of engagement with the municipality, right? But that would be like the kinds of questions I would love to ask you or you and Linda and other people. Is this what, like, where exactly in the administration has this process sat? Is it in the Department for Culture and Heritage, or, you know, those kinds of really on the surface boring questions, but that are quite important in terms of renegotiation relationships between administrations and citizens? So that's just like I wrote down so many questions.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Is the Department of Diversity and Inclusion.
Yes.
And that's run by Linda.
Yeah,
Workman.
and I am really happy to hear that, because, of course, one of the things that is interesting when we're looking at governing with memory or governing memory, it is also like, what beyond governing memory, what are we actually governing? And so here it's also about inclusion, and often we find that engagement with the past is, as we all know, it's about the present and the future, right? But that also means that you're dealing with policy fields that are usually dealt with in other ways, but are now dealt with through commemoration. Anyways, so that's just a jumping off point. But I hope we'll get a chance to talk more, because this is fascinating and interesting. So now I will say something really anemic and academic in comparison, where a lot less is at stake. And I'll try to share here my slides. All right, so yeah, so I've been working on what we call administrations of memory with, and I have to kind of slightly lean to the side, with Sarah Gensberger, who is the past president of the Memory Studies Association. But we met some years ago because we kind of shared an interest in looking not at kind of political positioning around memory issues, or, you know, the narratives that we're left with and representation and interpretations of those, but actually looking at what happens between those positions, like how is the sausage made? So what, opening the black box of bureaucracy, which sounds really boring, but which is really giving a lot of shape, I think, to memory. And I came to this because I was asked to do an evaluation of an EU project in Northern Ireland, where the EU had been funding a lot of storytelling projects, because it was one of the ways in which people were coming to terms with the past after 30 years of conflict and, you know, 25 years of peace, which you also need to come to terms with. And there had been so many storytelling projects in Northern Ireland that the European Union were wanting an evaluation of what they had been funding. And one of the things that we usually think about when we think about storytelling projects is, of course, that people are talking about their own memories and experiences. It becomes a very kind of organic bottom-up story. But what I found when I was interviewing the different projects was that one of the key performance indicators for getting the EU funding was to lead to reconciliation. And so, of course, some narratives that are more about reconciliation got propelled to the top in these storytelling projects. And I began to think a lot more about this, you know, the ways in which it's never top down or bottom up, but a circulation, and how that circulation works. I was interested in thinking more about. And so the first point was, of course, that a lot of people in memory studies we're talking about circulation of memories, but specifically as narratives and representations. And I was interested in thinking about the politics of memory as this kind of bureaucratic process, which is also a place for generation of relationships and memories, etc. And so I took my point of departure in this quote by Ashplant, Dawson, and Roper, which is about commemorating war, where they say politics of memory should be understood as a much more complex, integrated account of the interacting processes that link the individual, civil society, and the state. And it's not news in memory studies. Very few people in memory studies think that it's either top-down or bottom-up. But like a little bit with nationalist methodologies, we often end up assuming it anyway. So I was really trying to find a way to study these things without thinking that it was either the state or society or whatever top-down, bottom-up mechanisms you wanted to focus on. So the next jumping off point was that Sarah Gensberger and I were like, it was clear to us from our case studies, which are France and Ireland, that memorialization was becoming like a distinct category of governance and public administration, that more and more issues were governed through memorialization. And so in order to study this, we would focus on institutional pathways. What are the departments? Like Leroy just said, is it a cultural and heritage department? Is it security? Is it foreign policy? What is, like, all of these processes have different policy instruments available to them. They have different powers in relation to other departments. Some departments are small with very little funding. Like in Denmark, it would be like the church ministry. There are other departments like the Ministry for Finance. They're really well armed in terms of money and power. And so where would memorialization sit in the system? So we're not so interested in educational policy or cultural policy, because it's kind of a given where it sits, but a lot of these memorialization policies would kind of creep up in different departments. So we were thinking a lot about how to study this and kind of how to follow, like, who do we follow into the black box? And here we're quite inspired by political anthropology, political sociology, and the anthropology of policy, like how we look at these processes. And so the point was not to just focus on representations of the past, but on these political processes of engagement and what they mean both for governance and for democratic participation. Because obviously, so your case, Leroy, is really strong for that kind of engagement of a community that used to be a minority community, now becomes mainstreamed by having this, potentially having a national holiday. So this kind of, what are the opportunities to get engaged as a citizen through these processes of memorialization? And so looking at the policy of that. And you can see the book we edited here, Sarah and I, well, this is the book version. We edited a special issue with quite different cases. What we wanted to do at that time was to kind of go beyond the nation, like everybody else in memory studies wanted to go beyond the nation. But at the same time, we wanted to bring back the state, because the state is really still very important in terms of translating transnational trends into local government, as well as Leroy's case is showing that we have a lot of local movement in nation states, but the state is still acting as a kind of a tight funnel in some ways. So I wanted to say just a little bit about what administration is in my work. I may not speak so much about it because I'd rather actually get to the conversation with Leroy. But just to say that what I mean by administration is that it's at once like the institutional structures or an administration. So in the US kind of politics field, we would think about an administration. So for instance, the Clinton administration, the Biden administration, it has a temporal frame. It's also, of course, the kind of different institutions and different governing bodies that an administration is made up of. But then I also think that administration is a verb. It is something you administrate stuff, right? And when we talk about administration, it becomes like it becomes a little bit, again, anemic, because administration is boring. It's the ticking over of the usual routines. It's routine bureaucracy. But what I'm quite adamant is that bureaucracy is not depoliticized, and it shouldn't be depoliticized. We shouldn't think of it as something that's just carries out policy. We should think about it as a place where policy is shaped. Even if it's not intentional, it is shaped by the different processes that things have to go through, how many days between a hearing and a debate, what office is taking care of it, etc. So policy is shaped in those processes, and it is a key interface of political engagement. And aside, as I would say, of composite or network governance, where the state isn't the sole authority. All sorts of actors are involved to lend legitimacy to processes, and so it becomes a kind of a shared mode of governance. And in that process, I think it's quite important to say that that's not a linear process where you start out wanting to do one thing and then you end up delivering that thing. No, what you want to do and how you understand the way you do it, and the norms and values and beliefs invested in that process is being made as part of the process. And so it's quite an emergent field. So I was looking at storytelling. I've been looking at storytelling in Northern Ireland now for about 10 years. And I've been looking at it in relation to policy, because in Northern Ireland, there isn't this big mechanism of how to deal with the past. The peace agreement of 1998 didn't have an architecture of how to deal with the past, so not a Truth and Reconciliation Commission or any of those kinds of mechanisms that we know from South Africa and other places. So it's been much more of a piecemeal process, and that has, of course, also shaped the kinds of stories that you can tell, but also shaped how people understood the politics of storytelling, like what were they doing when they were telling their stories. So I've been following these policy processes and their actors in the storytelling projects, the paper trails, the institutional settings, the different ways in which they've been framed and funded and survived, because a lot of these projects have project funding and are not sustainable in the longer term. And then I've studied the interactions and relations created in these processes of administrating storytelling, and trying to kind of look at the different levels between the local and the national and the transnational. And of course, in Northern Ireland, there is an overlapping British-Irish memoryscape, but there's also really strong connections to the European Union and to the US. And so a lot of what is relevant in Northern Ireland is relevant in a much larger site as well. Now, finally, and this is more looking to the future, and I was thinking actually on I'm trying to kind of conceptualize different modes of administration that capture memory in different ways and implicate the state in different ways. And I don't know how long I have to talk about this, so I'll just say very briefly that I was interested to hear about the Year of Remembrance that you had in the Netherlands, because of course the longer exposure of not commemorating every year at a certain date and then repeat commemorations like that every year, but this kind of opening of in photography, like the long exposure is keeping the lens open for a longer time, letting in more light, and so capturing different things. And so I'm quite interested in how governments at various levels have these years of commemorations. And in Ireland, they've had a decade of commemoration, so 10 years, where they commemorate the revolutionary period from 1912 to 1922. They commemorated that period from 2012 to 2022. And that means that you have like everything is caught up in commemoration, even things that have nothing to do with the past goes into that mode of governing. So that's one mode that I'm trying to look at. Another example would be remembering the First World War for, you know, the 4 years that the First World War lasted. Both France and countries in the Balkans and the UK did that. Okay, second one is slow assemblage, and I think that's close to what Leroy was describing as a process where it's not a top-down or bottom-up form of memory activism. It's kind of networked memory governance where activism may push the state to react, but then also becomes part of delivering the policy. And so it's not like a lot of memory activism tries to put that barrier between like memory activists as non-state actors and then the state as a memory actor in a different way. But of course, a lot of these processes are exactly like this. And so this kind of slow assemblage of networked memory governance, I think is an interesting mode of administration, not least because a lot of the time for memory activists to set agendas, they collect testimonies and experiences and memories of a lot of people, which is collected with a strong duty of care. What happens to that when it then gets the power of the state to accelerate processes, like can the same duty of care be dispensed? And then the final one is transitional and governance, and that is really about how to make administrations work. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to move so it can be seen. How to make administrations work where the state is deliberately being remade, and that's why it's not no governance. It is ungovernance, because it means that there is a minimal commitment to political community. So an example of this would be power sharing in Northern Ireland, or power sharing in Bosnia, or other places with power sharing governments where actually nobody's in the nation state that they wanted to be in, but they have to make it work. And how do you administrate memory when you have to kind of develop institutions that can underpin these really kind of processes that can never be about national community or, you know, other forms of community. But anyways, that's me.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to have you two join in a conversation, because I think it makes a lot of sense with this case study and the experiences that Leroy Lucas provides from Kitikoti, Utrecht, and Black Lives Matter Utrecht, and the monument process as well, and your research into exactly these nitty-gritty aspects of government and memory and how they interact and intersect. And yeah, so first of all, do you guys have any questions for each other? Because then we can start off those and then move on to a broader discussion afterwards.
I guess I would like to ask Leroy, if you were to, so on the one hand, you said that you didn't have to change anything because Linda stood guard around your ideas. But what kind of relationships do you think have been forged during that political process that, you know, takes time to get the planning permission, it takes time to have the debates, etc.?
Well, I was appointed to organize like a group around around this monument, and I understood that this was very political. So I made the group as diverse as I could, so that if word came out and people wanted to know who the group was, that it was like, you know, like we represented Utrecht, so that it wouldn't only be a black thing, because at the end of the day, the idea for the monument is that it's for the city, and the city celebrates commemorates Kitikoti through us. And because this was a very heavy subject, we had a lot of talks, especially with Linda and other civil servants. Is that the word for with other civil servants who were charged with helping us getting this done. So I would say yes, we had we had a lot of deep conversations. So I got to know people very well in a very short time. So yes, some of these people I do consider my friends now.
Thank you.
Yes. And I had a question. The word slow assemblage, and the way you described it, would you consider what Mr. King did back in the 60s or the 50s? Would that also be slow assemblage? That the because at the end of the day he wanted something done, so he got people to unite and fight the system, but he was also in contact with the government.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm applying it only to administrations of memory.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm thinking more, but I mean, because I guess you could talk about this in relation to social movements.
Yeah.
At all sorts of cases, but here I'm interested in the imprint it has on, again, like the memories we're left with, so that we think about the bureaucratic process as also giving shape to that, right? Like a generative process, and so the slow assemblage, like I only think about in relation to memory and administration of memory.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from anyone in the audience?
I had a question for Leroy, and that is, to what extent did you also collaborate with people that are living still in the overseas territories, or like, for example, the Dutch Caribbean, that are not inside the Netherlands now? Were they in any way involved in your project? Because most people come, of course, originally from there and then move to the Netherlands. How's the collaboration in that sense?
Well, thank you for that question. Very great question. Well, to be honest, I'm an island boy myself. I'm from Curacao. So and that was funny because when I went to the community, the Black community, and I told them what I was busy with, everybody thought I was from Suriname, because it was so imprinted in people's head that Kitikoti is a Suriname thing. But people need to understand that when I went to Amsterdam and I saw Kitikoti for the first time in Amsterdam with the monument over there, that made an impact on me. Because when I saw that, I was like, wow, look at us being united. Even though it's about a very bad part of our history, but it didn't matter to me because we were united. So yes, I had to go to my peoples. I had to have that conversation with my people from Curacao, with my people from Suriname, and other folks from the Caribbean island and Africa, because I wanted to have it be as Pan-African as possible. From all of the major cities, Utrecht is the least blackest. We got like 4 major cities: Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, Utrecht. Utrecht is quite white, if I may say so. So that's why I needed to go to my peoples, to everybody. And of course, when I went to the municipality, I told them I wanted to do this for everybody, because it's our collective history. This is about all of us. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear.
More questions?
Wolf first and then Eileen afterwards.
Yes, thank you very much for this very nice presentation. I'm wondering, because you're describing the process as such yeah, very harmonious one almost. So what were there moments of crisis in this process? Once the catalyst had taken place, the process actually unfolded, or maybe put the other way around. If Sarah was to look at the paper trail in a few years, would she find moments of tension, disagreement, discussions about funding that reveal contentiousness, maybe also about the design, about which we haven't talked yet? So are there any moments of tension that you remember that played an important role in the process?
Yes. Thank you. Great question. I want to split this question into two things. I am a very optimistic person, so I always knew that we was gonna get it. It never crossed my mind. So that's me. But the reality was a little different. Yes, we had some issues. We had some bumps on the roads, especially with the political movement on the right. They weren't really, you know what I'm saying? They weren't really asking for no monuments. They didn't want that. And then you had the when we chose the place where we wanted to have the monument at, Grifpark here in Utrecht, we had some issues with the surrounding people that lived there, because some of them didn't really want a monument either in their backyard, as they said. So, you know, we went through some things. But then again, that's why I will say I'm very happy that we had a councilwoman like Linda Voortman, who really took charge and went in and got everybody straight. That's leadership. So thank you. I hope that answers your question.
Hey,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Eileen, you can ask your question now.
Hi, yeah, first of all, thank you to both of you for your wonderful presentations. I learned a lot. Also, thank you to you, Thea, for organizing and chairing. I have a very minor question actually for Leroy, because I noticed an interesting parallel between the context in Belgium, this close relationship between memory activists and then wethouders, as you say, from the Green Party, because also in the Belgian context, there has been a close relationship for a long time between memory activists and community organizers within the Afro-diaspora in Belgium, and it's mainly people from the Green Party that have been pushing policy reforms in relation to questions for commemoration of the colonial past. But at the same time, there's also a lot of debate among communities of memory activists for political fear of political recuperation. And so I was wondering why, first of all, did you see an evolution within the willingness within the Green Party to profile itself on this issue? So what was in it for them to assist in this demand? And have there also been worries about political appropriation, and what would that look like? I was just wondering how this went throughout the process.
Okay, great question. I would say, and I'm going to say this also as a member of the Green Party, and in the Netherlands now it's red-green, so the Labour Party is joined with the Green Party. I would say that because I was a member of the Green Party, I also had a stake in how the party operated with this touchy subject. So I didn't really I didn't see the issue of appropriation by the party, because my community and me, we were the ones engaged at the forefront of this issue and to getting this done. So you could say that, yes, Linda showed leadership, Linda, the wethouder of my party, but she was backed by the community. So so it never was an issue of about appropriation by the party, because the community wholeheartedly supported the idea of having a monument within our city. I hope that answers the questions.
Yeah, for now, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dominic, you raised
Yes, that's me. Thank you. I also have a question to Leroy. You mentioned that Utrecht, out of the big cities in the Netherlands, is the one with relatively low percentage of people with migrant background. And have you had any chance to come into contact and share experiences with people from Rotterdam or Amsterdam who are also trying to, erect similar monuments? And did you have a chance to compare your experiences, how it went in their cities?
Yes, thank you for that question. Great question. Okay, I'm gonna I don't want I'm gonna say this. When Mark Rutte went on to say the excuses for slavery, before that, we had a lot of consultations with the big government and the Black community. And I guess people saw me as being one of the leaders. So I was asked to participate in some of these meetings with the larger government. And I remember that after these meetings, I had conversations with other community leaders from all of these different cities, especially from Rotterdam and Amsterdam, and some folks from The Hague. And like I said, I don't want to. It was the reason why I'm so careful is because at that point, that was the moment that I saw how, what's the word? Maybe volatile, how deep this went with us as a community. Because, like I said, I'm a very optimistic person. I am. But when I saw the rest of the community and the way folks were addressing each other and the debates that we had, I kind of understood why, a lot of people say that we are a divided people. And I took it upon myself at that moment to be like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be part of the divisiveness. I want to be part of, the solution and trying to bridge the gap between the people who might want to do something, but just don't know how. So when I got into contact with other people from other cities, one of the first things that I told them, like, hey, man, how much are you willing to put into this? Because it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, but you gotta press on. And one of the first things that I heard from folks from other cities was like, well, you know what, you got it easy because your government is left wing. And that's the when I heard that, I was like, no, you guys got it wrong. yes, the government might be left wing, but we are the whitest city of the big four. We don't have that much black, Afro-black people living here in Utrecht. So for me, I told them, like, if you take a city like Rotterdam, which is almost 60% colored and black folks and 40% white, I was like, hey man, you guys should be running that city by now. But that's not the case. And the thing is, it's the other way around. It's like extreme right wing is running that city, at least for a long time. So for me, I was more like, if you guys are only here to have debates and conversations, I'm not with that. I wanted to be that person that was trying to show people, like, hey, there is another way and you got to be positive about it. So I didn't really talk a lot with folks from other cities. And the conversations I did have were the ones that I saw, like, hey, you guys got potential to do something. So I went with it because I didn't want to have, the conversation like, those white folks, they're coming for us and they're doing it. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not with that. I'm not with that. I'm trying to move the ball forward.
To that, there are certain examples of people and organizers working on several different monuments of the ones that have been erected and are still in the works. I wrote a paper on this a few years ago, and one of them is Perry Wijntuin from exactly, who worked on the Rotterdam monument and was a civil society representative in that whole process and quite a central figure. But then she was asked to participate in the committee during the Hague monument, and she's working on that now. So she has gone from this bottom-up activist figure or community-focused figure to actually being part of the process from the beginning in the Hague.
Yes. She was one of the first people I called when the municipality here in Utrecht gave us a go for the monument, because I knew who she was. She's a major figure in our community. So I called her up, and first thing I asked her is, what do I do? So yeah, I'm just glad that I have elders within the community who could guide me in certain ways. Every city is different. Rotterdam is not Utrecht. So we did it our way here, but she sure did help. So I'm very thankful for that.
And Wolf has another question.
Yeah, perhaps if I may, a brief question to Sarah. I found it very interesting, Leroy, that you talked about the Floyd lynching as a catalyst here, and you also pointed at a book, probably a somewhat academic book that played a role. I'm wondering, Sarah, if yes, exactly that one, which is, if I'm not mistaken, significantly older. I mean, it has been around for a while, so in that sense, I probably wouldn't call that book a catalyst in that sense of the word. But Sarah, is there a way to look at administrations which do have a certain degree of inertia and see what makes them move? Where are the initial dynamic put into movement? Is it civil society? Is it occasionally the administration itself? So what if you're maybe also looking comparatively, or maybe at the Irish case, what is setting an administration into motion that it says, okay, this is something we should address, or this is a resource that we should take advantage of?
Yeah, I was actually thinking when Leroy said about the two kind of catalysts for it, that that I would also look for administrative self-interest in explaining why it happens now. Because usually it's also about self-preservation for administrations, that they take up issues that either fill gaps that have been, issues that they used to deal with are no longer there. They need new issues to make themselves useful. There are all sorts of kind of administrative survival and self-interest and ways in which issues can be used to make them important still. So I would look for I would look at the administration too. I wouldn't say that it's not true that the book and George Lloyd were catalyst events, but I would also look for, like, why is it? Because there is quite a lot of inertia and ticking over in administration. So why are they opened up? And I think, like, obviously you need somebody like Linda. I mean, so it won't happen without Linda, but there are also going to be processes that are sense-making to the institution itself that need to be there. And I would look for that as well. I don't know if that's not a very specific answer, but I think part of Sarah Gensberger's work on the French state is, of course, to show, like, when they have a ministry for veterans, and once they don't have so many veterans anymore, then it makes sense to rename that ministry to something about commemoration, because then that you never really run out of that. And so there are ways in which I think memorialization and commemoration are coming in to fill gaps where you might have difficulty doing things in different ways. And I think absolutely diversity and inclusion is one of those places where you kind of write new population into the history through these kind of transnational histories. And I think another example would be in the UK, where they're teaching partition history, partition of India. Interestingly, they don't compare it to the partition of Ireland, but they do quite a lot of partition of India, but they teach it not as part of the history curriculum, but as part of citizenship education, because it's also used to govern relationships between the Hindus, Muslim, and Sikh community in the UK, right? So I would look for self-interest as well as doing the right thing.
Raises intriguing questions, Leroy. Do you have a sense, if you look back now, it has existed for what, 3/4 of a year? Has it benefited a part of the administration? Are there players, maybe very visible one, or perhaps less visible players who have benefited from this history, from the creation of the monument and from its reception, perhaps?
Oh, that's tough to say. That's tough. That's like, say, if anybody within the political class of Utrecht would benefit from this monument, to be honest, I don't think so. To be honest, because a lot of people were not really waiting on a monument. They were, a lot of folks thought that the money wasn't well spent. You can spend the money building houses in plots instead of a monument. So I don't think that Linda is praised enough. Linda Voortman is praised enough for all the yeah. I don't want to use any derogative words, but she had a lot of stuff coming her way, and it wasn't pretty. So she took a bullet for us. So I don't think that's a figurative bullet.
Yeah, no, let me just hurry up and say that I'm not at all thinking that Linda has self-interest in that sense. I would be more like, but I always almost said challenge accepted, because I am sure I could find some administrative reasoning for, how this works, or made along the way. And I don't know, maybe something like, if there was this overseas engagement, did the municipality then develop links? All of these kinds of how the administration benefits from dealing with this issue, not in a sinister way, but just, it's a capacity building, it's relationship building. It may be a lot of money that they didn't want to spend on this, but then it works in more subtle ways in terms of integration and kind of relationship making and inclusion and diversity. And so I would think definitely that there would be something to find there. It might not be the most important thing, but I think it is an important thing to also factor in.
Oh, most certainly, most certainly. I think if you might dig deeper, you might find something. But for me, from where I stood and what I saw, slavery is not like the sexy thing that you're gonna move up with politics. It's this, I don't know. Because
But it is a memory community that is now
yeah,
a policy community. And so you're making
yeah,
policy communities out of memory communities. You're getting engaged, like parts of the population engaged, and in the administration of politics in ways that are perhaps new.
And of course, because I understood immediately that my part in all of this was to smooth out any issues that were left on the table after all of these heated debates, because there were heated debates. There were. So for me, when Kitikoti came along, I understood that I had to single out some folks, not only the people who were for, but people who were against it. Because I'll say this, this is like my final weeks as being the chairman of Kitikoti. So in March, I'm going to be stepping down as chairman, and in my farewell address, I said, I want to thank the people who were for us and the people who were against us. Because I think that my grandma, may her soul rest in peace, she always said, there is no, it's a Dutch saying, there is geen, there's no shine if you don't rub it. So it needs to rub, so you can get the shine. So sometimes things needs to, you gotta have friction. And to have friction, you're gonna have the people with and the people against you. So I think, so I thank everybody for playing their part. I think everybody had to play their part. So that's why I always had an optimistic look on this. I hope that makes sense.
A lot of sense.
I think if you want to find an example of clear political motive when it comes to these memorials, you can go back to the first one in Amsterdam in 2002.
Oh, yeah.
A clear political motive was to close down the debate then with the national monument, and that backfired completely. And now we have 6 to 7 upcoming and newly erected local monuments instead, and it's become an entire movement and possibly a national holiday. So I think you can go back to those documents and find a motivation for closing down an upcoming discussion.
I think you could say I think it's part of our collective emancipation process. Because I was telling somebody the other day about what I was about this, and we started talking about slavery and what happened, and I told them, like, everything that has gone down these last 3 years, it's all part of the process. It's part of a process that had to be done. After slavery, we didn't get an apology. It took 150 years before we got it. It's crazy if you think about it. Like Thea said, they placed a monument in Amsterdam, so they was like, okay, we're done. But it wasn't done. And I think the process is not done yet. It will continue on. In what type of form, I don't know yet. But if I can at least look into the future from my point of view, I always say this: building monuments is good. Building institutions is better.
I think that is a fantastic place to stop, and I have to go because I have to catch a train. So thank you very much, Leroy. Thank you, Thea, for organizing. I'm sorry I have to run, but I'm getting the train back to Copenhagen. So thanks for inviting me. I was really happy to be part of the discussion with you, Leroy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for giving me new words.
You're welcome.
I'm going
Bye.
to remember that soul assemblage.
Guys,
Bye-bye.
we have one last question, I think. So, Leroy, if you have time to stay for that, we can say.
Yes, I'm going to take one more questions because I got to go bounce off too. But hey, let's go.
Okay, one short question then.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for the amazing talk. So because Sarah just mentioned about the administration of memory and also the memory activism is not only about the establishment of the monument, but also about the daily operation of the monument. And also you mentioned that it's very important in the future it's more important to have this institution and operate for long terms. So I'm more concerned about the daily running of Katikoti now, in the daily how do your community and people design and also decide on the different varieties of the activity, because I just checked you have a lot of amazing activity speeches or also walking and also workshop and who's gonna involved with this daily operation? Will there be any people from the government or the bureaucracy system also involved with it? And if so, how will they be involved in this process? Thank you so
Great
much.
question. No problem. Great question, man. I gotta say, okay, I can only speak for myself. I will speak for my city. At this point, we're finalizing the end of my chairmanship, and we got a new chairman, or at least chairwoman. She will be coming into power beginning of March, and before we knew that we wanted to have a situation in which our legacy, the monuments, and the memorial. What was the word again?
Memorial site or
The memorial site of the commemoration. That was the word. That the commemoration would continue on. So that's why we had a conversation with the municipality that to ensure that everything continues on. Without Leroy, like for real, I'm not that important. Everybody had a part in this. Everybody had a part in this. A lot of people had a part in this. So we had a conversation with the municipality. We had a conversation with our own community to make sure that until, I don't know, the distant future, that they will celebrate and have a commemoration around this monument. So I think we got good guardrails, and we got, we got good backing from the community and the municipality. So I am optimistic about the future and about the continuation of Kitikoti, not just from the municipality and the community, but also from other institutions here in the city. So I'm good. I think it's gonna continue on. Thank you for your question.
I think
Yes.
those words were going
Thank you.
to end today's session. Just before you guys leave, I just wanted to say that this was the first event in a series of 3 events hosted by myself and my colleagues at Aarhus University. The next one will be on 5th of April and is hosted by Alexander Ulrich Thyssen and will concern itself with activism and Chile. Then we have another event on the 6th of May hosted by Philipp Steenman-Baum, who will talk about the memory practices of far-right movements. So stay tuned for those events as well. Thank you so much for joining today, and you can access the recording of this session at some point in the near future on the website of the Memory Studies Association.
I want to thank you, Thea, for organizing this and for having me. And I want to thank everybody for showing up.